It started with the Stanford group saying, hey, can we do a session? The Women in Investing group saying, can we do a session? We said, let's bring it all together. So it's a coalition collaborative effort, much like ONDC is. ONDC started its journey about 2 years ago, and we have Mr. Agarwal here with us. This is also a COVID creation. Mr. Agarwal, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the session today. He will be our keynote. We have just done introductions, and I'm starting with the brief intro to ONDC journey, and I'm going to turn over to you in a minute. So it started actually as a COVID initiative to keep essential supply chains running across India. And then with Mr. Agarwal's leadership and vision, as he said, humne shuru kiya aur karwa banta gaya. And this is what the karwa has resulted in. So Mr. Agarwal, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjali. And thank you so much for having me today. It's a privilege to be talking to such an enlightened audience about an initiative that we believe has the potential to fundamentally change certain things that we do today, that we are used to doing today. You know, Government of India has been working proactively during the lockdown period. You may know that we've had very extensive lockdowns starting third week of March in 2020. And then, you know, in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry decided to formulate certain initiatives with participation from the stakeholders. So there were 6 different groups that were formed for different aspects. For example, you know, for development of vaccines, for development of PPE kits, for ensuring adequate essentials commodities, and so on. One of the groups was assigned to me, and that was innovative and technological solutions for managing the pandemic. I was also heading the Startup India program that time. And then, you know, connecting with all the innovators across the country was actually an enlightening experience. So what we did was, you know, we identified that one of the fundamental issues that needed to be addressed at that point of time was, how do you ensure essential supplies, fundamental stuff, the bread and the butter, rice and wheat that you need to eat to survive, the milk, the butter and all that. How do you give it to those citizens in large numbers who are contained in the containment zones? Now, the containment zones could be multi-storied complexes. They could be city streets, and they could be different villages across the country. And then we tried to connect those who were in containment zones through digital means with those who were the suppliers. Let's call them, you know, the most popular term is the local mom and pop stores. We call them in India, we call them Kirana stores. Typically, you know, a Kirana store is a very small business enterprise without any technological backbone. They do their business primarily on the strength of individuals. The families carry on everything. They do not have a very systematic account keeping. They do not have any ledgers. Most of their work is done on memories. You know, the father and the son, even the wife joins in, the daughter joins in. All the family together runs a mom and pop store. Now, with that kind of technological awareness, we had to connect them to those citizens who are in containment zones. And as we tried to connect some of them, we realized that there is a huge disconnect between online demand and online supply. So, for example, in different cities of the country, we tried to connect traders to one particular platform. But that one platform was available only in one city. It was not available in the next city. And so if you go to the next city, you have to get onto another platform. I am not talking of the bigger platforms because they were not available. Then, even if you look at one big multi-storied complex serviced by one small store, there are people on different platforms. So the small store needs to be on different platforms, get onboarded onto different platforms to be able to serve the customers that are there on different stuff. So then, the thought that came was, can we standardize the process of onboarding a trader? Can we standardize cataloging? Can we standardize online presence? Can we standardize online storefront? Then search, discovery, order placement, payments, delivery. Is it possible to standardize the entire chain of commerce, exchange of goods and services, right from cataloging to delivery and beyond delivery for cancellation and refunds? Was it possible? And then, the best thing was, then Anjali and her group, which were working with us, they came up with this brilliant idea. They said, we have this Beckn protocol, open source developed by the Beckn Foundation. We are trying it for mobility. Why don't you try it for commerce? I said, yes, let's do this. And then through a public-private participation, a concept of the open commerce network, and we called it Open Commerce Network for Bharat. So it was essentially, we thought it's primarily meant for India, the rural part, the type 3, the tier 3, the tier 4 and the villages. But as we worked along, we realized it has the potential to transform the world. It is not something which is going to be useful only for India. It's going to be useful for everyone. And so this is what we've done. Now we call it Open Network for Digital Commerce, based on standardization of all processes that are required in exchange of goods and services. And over a period of time, we have gained a lot of traction. We've been asked difficult questions. So, the first question that was asked of us was, why should the government get into the business? And we said, we are not getting into business. Does that sound like a paradox? No, it is not. What ONDC is trying to do is, we are developing standards and we are developing protocols for exchange of information based on those standards. We are developing APIs. That's all. We are acting as a referee for exchange of information relating to different aspects of commerce. This is what we are doing. And the entire effort is based on voluntary adoption. Now, our team has been working, and we've been working with e-commerce companies, we've been working with startups. There is a lot of excitement. And the excitement is because the existing platforms, if you look at today's e-commerce world, 42% of global e-commerce is owned by 4 Chinese companies. I think we all know that. 4 Chinese companies control 42% of global e-commerce. If you look at the penetration, e-commerce sales as a percentage of total retail sales, Japan has about 10%, UK has 24%, China is 27%, and US is about 20%. 20% sales, 20% retail sales are done through e-commerce platforms. In India, it is 8%. And over a period of the last 8 years, what we have done in terms of development of digital ecosystem, we have one of the highest penetration of public identity based on your biometrics. 1.4 billion people have Aadhar numbers. We have almost 100% penetration of bank accounts. And we have huge penetration of mobile network connectivity. So this trinity that we call it JAM, the Jan Dhan accounts, the Aadhar and the mobile, the JAM trinity, the digital ecosystem that we have created in India at population scale is going to drive the e-commerce penetration much beyond what any other country has achieved. And we sincerely believe we are on the cusp of a huge digital revolution in e-commerce. If you look at the structure of e-commerce, what are the kind of goods that are traded on e-commerce? Typically, you will find that high profit items are traded more on e-commerce. You will see mobile phones being one of the prime items. And we've seen a whole lot of shops selling mobile phones getting shut over a period of time. Fashion clothing, all high profit stuff. It's all getting transferred to platforms. They are all funded by VCs. And the VCs fund the kind of discounts that they give to customers. If you look at Indian e-commerce space, two large companies, Flipkart and Amazon, they control about 63% of the e-commerce market. The rest is divided amongst so many of them. And this dominance creates huge problems. One trader, if he wants to get onboarded onto one platform, there is a proprietary process of know your customer. They have their own process of how they will create a catalog. They have their own terms of payment of commissions. When the payments will be made. Somebody says, I will settle in 1 week. Somebody says, I will settle in 15 days. Somebody says, I will settle by the end of the month. There are different conditions that platforms impose on sellers. When you've done all this, even then, you can't be sure that what you are listing will be visible to the customer who's looking for the stuff that you have. Because they will ask you to advertise. And unless you advertise, unless you sponsor, your product will not be visible to somebody who's looking exactly at what you are trying to sell. And these are the things that closed platforms create for small traders getting onboarded onto the platform. Of course, we know that if you are on platform A, a customer can only buy from only those sellers who are on platform B, on that platform. What we are trying to create is something like an email service. For example, let's say I use a Gmail account. Somebody else uses a Yahoo account. The third one uses an Outlook account. Are we able to exchange emails or not? What a silly question it is, right? Now, Gmail has created an entire stack of its own platform for servicing its own customers. Outlook has created an entire stack of proprietary platform for servicing its customers. However, at the bottom, they are all connected with what is called as SMTP, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And that is a wonder because of which we are able to send and receive mails irrespective of the platform that you are. This is exactly what we are trying to achieve with ONDC. It's an open network. Imagine if you are getting onboarded onto any platform, you are not getting registered with that platform only, but you are getting registered with a public registry. That is the ONDC registry. And whenever any search request comes, you are listed. So your products are shown. That is the power of this concept. In India, we have done these kind of initiatives before, implemented on population scale. And we believe that ONDC is another initiative that is going to transform the way e-commerce functions today. We've been asked whether the larger e-commerce companies will join you. They are evaluating. All the official statements will say, we are engaging with ONDC to figure out what is the role that we can play. The guarded statements. But we believe that the kind of expansion of the digital market that ONDC will bring in terms of customers, in terms of sellers, these bigger platforms will see business proposition in what ONDC is trying to do, and they will join for enhancing their own market shares. It is important that they look at this value. I'm sure, this session that has been organized today has marquee speakers. We have Koshy, we have Dr. Pramod, we have Sujith. These are the architects, they are the people who have built the technological rails on the basis of which this entire network is building. We are extremely proud of their work. And we are very clear that, it is not a government initiative. It is a government and industry initiative. It is a private-public partnership that is leading to this kind of revolution. We are very clear on what we want from ONDC. We have created this company as a non-profit company so that the objectives of this company are never to make profits, and it regulates the network the way it is meant to be regulated on ethical and moral grounds. We already have best of Indian banks, public sector banks, the private sector banks. We have stock exchanges who are experienced in handling millions of transactions every day. We have the National Payments Corporation of India, which has implemented UPI as an equity shareholder in this company. And we are looking at truly transforming the digital commerce space. We have covered a lot of distance in the last 2 years, from a mere idea to a hackathon last December, where the concept was proved, that the cascaded transaction was proved in 2 separate platforms. And now in April last week, we have launched pilot. We have the first cohort of about 7 companies. Some companies doing the buyer's part, some companies doing the seller's part, some companies doing the logistics part. And real life transactions are happening as we speak. Real life payments, deliveries, and cancellations are happening as we speak. It's getting more and more exciting every day. I hope that this initiative will generate a lot of traction. The ultimate aim of this truly digital democratization is that a housewife in India, in a village, should be able to order something, some household stuff from a small store from the next village or a village outside her home. That is the dream that we have. And we believe that our cooperation with best of the technology partners, with best of investors, with best of academics, the best of the brains, bringing together this effort, we are on the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. That was very enlightening. And on that note, we will turn the session over to our absolutely dynamic leader of ONDC, Mr. Koshy Thampi. Koshy, as he is known, has had a very long career in building a lot. He's been involved in a lot of the building of large public population scale digital infrastructure. Koshy, I'm going to turn over to you. Friends, the way we will run this is Koshy is going to take us through a brief presentation on ONDC. A lot of questions have been coming both on chat and in Q&A. And I think you will find a lot of these questions will get answered as he goes through the presentation. And then Pramod and Sujith will jointly discuss some of the technology and the technical aspects and the thought process behind open digital ecosystems that actually supports in the Beckn protocol, that is the underlying protocol for ONDC. On that note, Koshy, over to you.
Thank you.
And just one point, please keep posting your questions. If something doesn't get covered, we will have time at the end of the presentations to also have a more interactive Q&A. And I know a few folks have sent me questions beforehand. We will spotlight you and ask you to please ask your questions live.
Thank you, Anjali. I'm just quickly run through the story of what we are trying to do here in ONDC. Let me just pull up one of, can you see my slide? I just want to use the slide for a second. Anjali, can you see my slide?
Koshy, we cannot see your slide.
Okay.
Do we need to make him co-host? Can we do that?
Okay, let me just quickly.
Right. Okay, we can see it now.
Okay. Okay, so one, sorry, let me just put. Mr. Anil gave us the whole context of how ONDC got evolved and what we are trying to do. So what I'll do is I'll quickly make a presentation of on how we are implementing this, and with Pramod and Sujith here, whatever technical foundations on which ONDC is built and the protocol developed, etc., is something that they will be able to share in detail and answer any questions, because they are the people, they are the architects, they are the people who think, they are the thinkers. And I'm somebody who takes what they think and try to implement that, try to make it a reality. So when the thinkers are here, I should rather let them share the thinking process, and I'll come on to what we are trying to do as implementation. So as Anil explained, while we saw the growth of e-commerce in India in the last few years, pretty fast, and a large cross section of the middle and the upper class cross section of the society are using it, but still the penetration is only about 6 to 7%. And when it comes on the buyer side, and when it comes to seller side, it's even probably less than 1%. And as he explained briefly, which you're all familiar, I'm not going through and to get in detail on this one. The current model of e-commerce anywhere in the world, including in India, is a platform-centric approach. What does it mean? It means that there are few platforms existing who are providing complete end-to-end integrated solution. Fantastic solution they give. They have the sellers, they have the logistics, they have the warehouse, they have the buyer interface and everything. But one challenge that we have all observed in that kind of a model is that these platforms do use proprietary technology, which is fine. They are able to bring their innovation. But the challenge that happens is that in such a situation, it sort of lead to what popularly known as winner takes it all kind of paradigm. What it means is that when they are able to get a large cross-section of the buyers and seller into a network, the network effect will ensure that it is practically impossible to bring in big competition, especially unless you have such deep pockets, to sort of invest in this complete end-to-end solution. And that limits the kind of innovation that is possible to come from small startups and all. Of course, these platforms have their own very strong team of entrepreneurs, innovators who are doing a lot of great things, but it sort of limits who all can participate. That's why we brought in the idea of the open network, which essentially tried to see two things. One is, can we unbundle the components of transaction, whether it is seller side, whether it is logistics, whether it is buyer side. And once you let it to be unbundled and allow innovation in each of the segments, how can we ensure a seamless solution service to the client? It is by making all these components interoperable. They all talk the same language. So I'm not going into much detail. You're all familiar with that. So with this idea that we decided that using an open source protocol like Beckn, we should try to build a network for commerce in India. So, and as you briefly see on the left side, the current platform approach where the buyers and sellers are siloed up in certain platforms. We are trying to create a network of buyers and sellers and logistics providers and so on and so forth, all talking in the same language. So I just want to highlight two important implication of this. One is, today, if you look at, there are many organizations, let's say telcos, banks, and fintech companies who have pretty large number of users in their system, not for e-commerce, but for their service. Bankings have their own bank customers, telco have their telco customers, and so on and so forth. But they are all pretty large in numbers. But if they want to make e-commerce available to their clients, they have no option but to go and onboard millions of sellers, which is not their focus area. So the idea is that if they can make their buyer platforms ONDC protocol compliant, then all those buyers will be able to discover all the sellers on the other side in the network who are also available through their platforms using ONDC protocol. So the buyer group and the seller group, in a sense, becoming a large interconnected groups, not siloed or walled gardens. So what it means is that it is not the economies of scale that is driving, but rather the specialization and innovation of this small or big groups that is going to make a difference. So any buyer can come through any buyer platform and look at everything that's available relevant to him, which a buyer platform will allow him to choose. Because today, in this case, the buyer platform's loyalty is only to the buyer. He doesn't have to worry about which seller whom he has to encourage, which seller he's providing him the advertisement money, which provider is giving anything. And he doesn't have any such priorities to be worried about. He can focus on helping his customers, the buyers, to choose the best product possible for him. And if you look from the other side, who are the seller platforms, their approach, they don't have a captive audience of buyers ready with them, whom they can take for granted. Their only way of survival is that they have to have good products, good solutions to be ready to be made available. And only then they will get a good reputation in the network, and only then the buyer platform and the buyers will come to them. So the incentive for each of this group becomes exceedingly strong for the delivery of valuable, relevant, customer-friendly products and services, not the benefit of captive audience that they have. And that is the way the market structure is undergoing a change. And that is what is going to drive innovation. And in the last few days, when we have been talking to a large number of innovators and startup and so on and so forth, they say that now we have an opportunity. Earlier, we had the only opportunity that we had was either have extremely large resources to compete with one or two existing players, which is very often difficult, or if you have some innovative products, make it available to one of these two people and survive. Whereas now I have an opportunity to make my component, my logistics service, my seller platform. Probably I'm setting up a specialized seller platform for helping the Kanchipuram silk producers in South India to sell all their Kanchipuram products, only, nothing else. I can give them the market intelligence. I can give them every support. I can tell them how to digitize their front end and back end. And I can make the catalog visible to the network, but I don't have to worry about the buyers coming because buyers are there to be available. Buyers will find me out if I have the right product. So that is a paradigm shift that we are talking about. And so if I just put this in a big picture, in the rectangle that you're seeing is the total thing is your existing platform where everything is inside a black box. Whereas what ONDC is attempting is to say that we can unbundle, make each of the components work independently and talk to each other, and offer more products, more options, more services, better pricing. And what is ONDC as an organization is doing that we are going to do, Anil explained to you, we have been set up as a Section 8 company. Our job is to create and sort of help to bring this community together and provide them the foundational digital rail and so on and so forth. So if I briefly say there are three roles that we play. One role is at a development role. When it's a development role is to sort of work with people like Pramod and Sujith and bring out the best thing that is possible and adopt that for the e-commerce. That is the first part. Second, that is a technology part. And then the second part is that we know that once this protocol and standards are available, big guys can do by themselves. But there are a large number of small and medium enterprises who would want to be a part of the e-commerce, but they cannot, they will need a little hand-holding. So probably for them, they need SDKs, they need some, tips, tricks and tools, hand-holding support, capacity building, and so on and so forth. Essentially, the whole host of support activities, which is a part of the developmental activities, is to bring a larger number of buyer groups and seller group to become a democratic marketplace and not that of a concentrated marketplace where only few people survive and grow. And encouraging the innovation coming from even from the smallest guy and giving him an opportunity to be present and be discoverable with the equal probability compared to anybody else, almost equal probability. And that's what we're trying to do. But now that we try to bring all these things together, we have to provide some, like we said, common services. And so one, I said the development role. Second thing, if I loosely use the word, the role of a network orchestrator, enabler. Essentially, we work with all the participants together to create the code of conduct of how the network participants should behave. And to a great extent, all this code of conduct, the network policy should be programmable so that the enforcement is natural and nobody need to go after policing. And the whole idea is that if we all collectively agree, sign up to an agreement to come together, we should be able to have a disciplined marketplace to work together. So that's a role of the enabler. And the third is that of a service provider. If I just give you quickly some of the things that we're doing in addition to getting the platform up and in addition to getting the protocol up and running and so on and so forth. First thing is that we help to set up a common registry so that whenever we have buyers and sellers coming in, it is not that like a flea market, anybody can come and sell anything they want and make their catalog visible using some protocol and then vanish to thin air. No, it is an orderly place of people who have all agreed to work together. So we need to make sure that they are identified very clearly and they are there in the registry, and that they have implemented a software solution that is compliant to the whole protocol so that whenever they interact with the community, everybody will find it easy to interact with them and they will not create any mess up in the, in the system. So this rule, that is two big roles that we play as the people who bring the registry and do the certification to come in. The next, some of the common things that we are working on to make sure that the whole community works very well. is that, we are trying to create a network-wide reputation index so that, all the sellers, like we said, now that the sellers have become a big pool in itself, it's not somebody's proprietary walled garden. We need to get, network level reputation, which will help him to be unique, uniquely identified, and help him to be present in any network as he pleases, and not lose any of the credibility that is built up over a period of time, whether it is positive or negative, which will help him as well as the buyers. That is one common facility we are trying to build up. We are also trying to build up a common facility of having a repository of the catalogs centrally available from all the OEMs, if I use them, so that anybody who's trying to set up a platform for the buyer side and seller side do not have to reinvent and spend a lot of time to create this, they can draw upon the original documentation, which is available as a common public good that's also can be made available, to make sure that in case there is any challenges that is being faced in the whole commerce, we could have a much more seamless way of grievance handling, and more importantly, if any disputes are there. So we are trying to build up a framework for online dispute resolution and a platform to do that. These are these kind of common things that we are already working on. We believe that kind of common services will continuously help to strengthen the whole, the platform and the services that is possible to be done. So this is the line of attack that we're taking. And so we are actually in a startup mode in that sense. In the last few months where, we have been working to get the company up and running as a parallel effort, and the company is up and running since last month. We have a team that is coming up. In the meantime, as Anjali and Anil explained, we have, QCI had helped to, incubate a team to do a whole lot of activities that we are proud to say that as of now, we have a beta testing going on, and with about 5 seller platform and 1 buyer platform and 1 logistics provider all coming together and making transaction to a limited set of buyers and a limited set of sellers. And we believe that the practical learning that we will have from doing all these things in the coming weeks will help us to scale it up. And our ambition is to be present in at least 100 cities by, August. I know it's a tall ambition, but I think unless I tell that to myself and to my team members, we will not try hard. But that's what we are trying to do. And while we start with when we started with the most difficult part, which is like the grocery and the restaurants. But the idea is not to limit. I mean, our mandate is not to just limit only for a product or B2C product. We are provided for products and services. It means it could be B2B, B2C. It could be, we will start, having all kinds of products and services which are where we can have a seamless buy and sell possible. Earlier, you heard, there is already, related initiative that is happening in the area of mobility. We believe that, all these networks will come together to benefit from the common infrastructure and work as a, in tandem, so that we don't end up trying to recreate and rebuild such is already there. So our plan, what we are saying is we are seeing ourselves, getting into a journey in the coming few years, which will have a capability to completely transform the commerce, digital commerce in products and services. And we also believe that that kind of an initiative will encourage a lot of small and medium enterprises who are working with the state governments, developmental agencies, development banks, and like NABARD and CB, etc., to actually help the transformation process. And one of the most exciting things that we feel, normally if you try to go and tell the small and medium enterprise, let's try to do digitization to bring you efficiency. Sometimes they'll say, yes, interesting, but they are very often not able to understand and appreciate the whole thing. Now we are going to say that, boss, come, I'm going to help you take your catalogs onto the market. Your business is going to increase. And that is something they understand. And with that, that is a stepping point. And after that, I'm sure that they say, okay, now that you are doing in digitally, if you do this and this, a lot more efficiency come in. And I believe that is going to really excite the startup community and investor community to develop a lot of these kind of solutions to the market at large. And that is, this collective effort of, hundreds of entities coming together is what is going to transform the market, and not just concentration of a few entities who is trying to do everything possible, probably to a very specialized segment of buyers and sellers. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say. Over to Pramod and Sujith to give the technical foundations of this, and we can take any questions. Thank you.
I must point out, we have this group consists of innovators, founders, investors, technologists, social entrepreneurs. So it's a very diverse group. So everything that is being said and done here is particularly relevant, and we will welcome your comments as well as your questions. Pramod, please, over to you, and Sujith.
Are you taking few questions right now for Koshy, or what do you want to do?
We can take them all together, or I can take them now? What do you suggest, Pramod?
I think it may be okay to take it, because I think
some of those
questions are pouring in. So there are some specific ONDC questions like onboarding. How do you onboard? What is the onboarding process? What's the pilot timeline? When do they get to participate and all that thing? So there's some process questions which I left it to you, and I was answering a few other obvious questions.
Right. And I think it's been fairly interactive. You've been addressing. So there are questions around how do small sellers onboard? How are small sellers discovered? What is the search algorithm that came? Search algorithm actually came from Shailesh Kekre. His question is how does it ensure that smaller merchants will get a level playing field in search algorithms of large platforms, example Amazon and Flipkart, from Shailesh. Then we have questions around how does this impact FDI flows? I'm sure it came from an investor. We have things around how do you train and what is the verification, training, integration, development of solutions? How does that get done? A lot of questions around onboarding and catalog creation. And I'm just going through. How will data access be decentralized and shared, and intelligence across buyer platform to seller platform? And so what the whole data piece is, how will it be collected, stored, analyzed, used? Who does it belong to? And how, again, I will add my question. Let's also talk about how it will stay within the realms of the law of the land, because we do have now fairly stringent laws around data. So whole gamut of questions.
Yeah, so I'm going to just I can answer later as well from an architectural point of view. Data, how it will
be great if you could just sort of lay out also the open digital, the framework of open network. And what we have learned from you is that this is a network of network versus a platform of platform. So the difference between the network and the platform, open versus closed, and why this is exciting, because it democratizes access. It is not for or against any particular type of entity. It's actually just opening things up.
So, Koshy, if you want to take one question to start with, I think you can take that onboarding question immediately.
So I'll do an onboarding, and after that, probably you could talk about the.
I talk about the data as part of it.
Yeah. So onboarding. See, what we said that we have already started.
And promote the open architecture, please.
Yes.
What we are doing is like we said, we are on an aggressive mode of onboarding of people, both buyer and seller, the platforms. So what we do is like we have already publicized that anybody who is keen to sort of become a part of this network can send out an email to us at team@ondc.org. And we have a whole team working to give hand-holding support to those people who want to join. So like we said that we have, the initial pilot is going on. Every Tuesday, all the new set of people who are just trying to figure out how to come on board, where do you get the technology and so on and so forth, they come. We give them a brief expose, and there is significant amount of material published in our ONDC.org website for them to draw upon and work. And after that, what we do is we have established cohorts of people who are interested in to join, and we have a weekly connect with them to sort of sort out any challenges or questions that they have. And we actually do it in a community called Framework, because that actually helps the people to help each other, and that seems to be working pretty well. So and as of now, even this Tuesday when we had a session with for the people who are interested, we had about almost 25, 30 entities, almost 100 people joining in for a masterclass kind of a session to just get a big picture idea and get going. So the, and now that the things are getting processed, we'll do a lot more publicity through social media. We are going to work with the state governments and developmental institutions, etc., to publicize this factor. But in the meantime, if any of you guys are interested, just send one mail, team@ondc.org, and I can guarantee you that you will have all the assistance that is needed to become a part of this show.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So I'm going to run through a few other questions as well, so that we can have more conversations going. There were some questions about ONDC's subsequent scope, moving to hospitality, mobility, maybe even B2B. And I had answered that saying, yeah, there's nothing stopping from ONDC, but there is a growth curve. There is enough task on Koshy's hand. So I think it would be, in phases. I think retail commerce is what they're starting with, as I understand, and it would in phase. Beckn protocol
allow me to address that.
Yeah.
So the utility of the protocol and the network is not only for consumer.
Right.
Actually, a very large utility and use case for this is MSME to MSME trade. Today, there are very, so if you think about a garment manufacturer, say Ludhiana, who wants to order a component for his machine from Nashik, it's not a particularly organized or formalized or digitally visible chain. That is a massive use case for this as well, as ONDC continues to develop. There has been a lot of excitement from the agricultural ecosystem, particularly for FPOs. Somebody asked a question about farmers.
Agree, yeah.
So one of the first sort of non-consumer clusters that this will start working with is actually with NABARD. There's a hackathon being organized with NABARD to see how this could help more rural FPOs and artisan groups. SIDBI is also associating with some of their MSME clusters.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And on the mobility side, there was a question, and we said there is already independent. Some cities are exploring, like Kochi, they're already live with their first open mobility network. But ONDC as a national facilitator might also be playing a role in facilitating similar efforts and combining the muscle power to create a larger impact. But all this yet, and it'll unravel itself, I think, appropriately. Yeah, there's a lot of interest. I think it eventually goes back to the fact that if you look at the entire commerce space, including hospitality and mobility and agri and jobs and everything else, it's so little it's actually done. So I think it is about expanding the pie, expanding that universe of digital commerce. When that happens, I think what's really happening is the completely new set of entrepreneurs who are going to rise up. This is like the .com boom, literally, and we might not believe that, and we might not want to believe it, saying that internet that happened, but could we do that in India? But I think we have seen this happening with UPI. There are 4 companies who just literally rode the UPI wave, and UPI is just payment. Think about it. And commerce is so much broader and bigger and requires every possible entrepreneurial energy that allows us to digitize the edges, digitize that players on the edges and connect to the grid. So ONDC is simply a grid that allows that connection to happen. So if you are an entrepreneur, if you are in the VC space, these are early days. There will be uncertainties. There will be a question about participatory governance, policy. I saw a few of the questions. If I do 1 million transaction versus 1,000 transaction, do I get to dominate the network? Do I get voting rights? I think these are all evolution in progress. And I think what's going to happen is that there is a larger playbook that's being played out, and ONDC is going to facilitate participatory governance at the network level and the rules of that network game. And it is not evolved yet, and it will not be evolved. And we will be stupid here to say we know all the answers, I think. But that's what entrepreneurs are for. I think we have a very vibrant ecosystem of entrepreneurs who will have to step up and both digitize the edges, look for new opportunities, and actually help the network facilitator create a reasonable playground for that open innovation to happen. I think that's how you want to, your mental model should be that it's not all understood, here it is, join the party. It's not the case at all. It is bold attempt, world's first bold attempt of interoperable commerce. And someone actually, Bharat, I think one of you, and wrote that in the Q&A very well. Interoperability is and inclusion and expanding the pie is the real key thing. But who will actually do? Who will build the integrated experience? There was a question about integrated experience. Who will build that integrated experience? It's actually entrepreneurs. ONDC does not build apps, does not have a central platform. ONDC is like electricity grid. Somebody has to build the bulbs on one side, somebody has to build solar power on the other side, producers and consumer side. Someone will step up, and we are already seeing that momentum. We are seeing momentum not only from big consumer apps like PhonePays and Paytms of the world, but even smaller apps who are coming in the way, who are saying we can create experiences that are beyond the current experiences. But even more so, what personally I'm excited about, the integrated experience of the provider, I think, or the seller. I think that is going to be even more key. So many millions and millions of individual gig work, gig economy, and hospitality and agri, these economies have to be digitized. As they digitize, what does that integrated experience look like? What do they need? What tools do they need? Like the Khata book in India, is a very typical small retailer, double Khata books and all that, right? They do, whether right or wrong, they do this multiple book thing. You have to understand that, and only entrepreneurs can do it. ONDC cannot do this. Actually, entrepreneurs have to step up, and VC funding has to come towards a new age of innovation that allows us to imagine new integrated experience for an FPO, for example, and so on. And there was one question on data, which I want to address. There's significant, again, most of our mental model is that there is a database, and because we naturally come from the platform thinking world, right? So there is something in the middle. It's weird to imagine there is nothing in the middle, right? ONDC has no central database. ONDC does not even get to see the transaction. It's important to understand. ONDC team cannot see the transaction. It's end-to-end encrypted. There was another question on privacy and security. So I want to say that these are literally peer-to-peer, end-to-end encrypted transaction that happens between a buyer platform, a buyer, consumer sitting in front of a consumer platform, and a seller sitting in front of a seller platform. And the data will reside where the transactions occurred. That means a copy of consumer data will reside in where the consumer apps. So if I open PhonePay or Paytm or Google Maps or any of the smaller apps that I open my Gate, any of these apps who wants to play in this game, open up that. If they conduct a transaction, they will have a copy of the transaction. On the other side, counterparty, if the seller participated in that transaction, they will have a copy of that data. Of course, they will have a copy of the data for both compliance and as their own invoicing and their own accounting. And third, if a transportation partner, in this example, logistics partner, like Danzos of the world, who participate in delivering, for Shadowfax, Delivery, any of these companies who delivered that transaction, they will have a copy of the delivery. It's no different from what happens today. If even global e-commerce, right? If FedEx drops a shipment, they get copy of their envelope data, that what they delivered, where they delivered, what time, so that they can account for it and they can invoice it and they can get payments done. So each counterparty who participates in the transaction will have a copy of the data. And Anjali's point is that the data, that there is no central data, end-to-end encrypted with only counterparties, very similar to what we want to happen. And that's also very aligned to our data protection law. I think Anjali's point is that it's aligned to at least in ONDC case, ONDC is an Indian entity, and hence it is for the Indian sellers and consumers to start with. So definitely data protection law and data empowerment law of India will have to be adhered to, and make sure that each of these platforms take care of their protecting their data and making sure their data is visible to their consumers and sellers as per the law. ONDC is not a lawmaking entity. It simply take advantage of the existing laws. So that's on the data. Analytics, there was a question on the analytics. A brilliant question. Is that there is a need for shared view of the health of the network. Is the overall ONDC healthy? Is it vibrant? Is it diverse enough? Or is it only few people are capturing that? or only few domains are working, or only some part of the India ONDC is being really taken off. To understand and facilitate growth, inclusion, and diversity, the open data is necessary as well. So I think there are a set of open data APIs, anonymize, aggregate, open data APIs, would be also part of the network participation rule. That means if you're a platform participating, a minimal set of health data, aggregate data, not individual data, aggregate data will have to be shared with ONDC. ONDC makes that as an open data so that the entire system collectively knows the behavior of the system. Is purely because we want to understand the penetration, understand the overall adoption, diversity, and also understand any grievances and dispute, which is one of them I answered. So how does an integrated marketplace, two-sided marketplace like Amazon today, it's quite easy for, not easy, I shouldn't say, this is hard work for them for sure, but it is easier compared to a decentralized network to deal with returns, grievance handling, or any of that. Then I call call center and some of them just give you free or give you a good deal or whatever and close it out very quickly. Try to close it out quickly. In a decentralized network, this does get complex. Let's not beat around the bush. These systems get complex. But that is why ONDC is also facilitating an ODR, open dispute, online dispute resolution system, which is also decentralized. That means some people can mute, I think, if anybody, people who can, a consumer in a consumer app want to raise a complaint that I got a bad product. They don't have to hunt around where to call. They will go through the consumer app to say, log a complaint. When that log complaint happens, unlike in the Amazon case or in the Flipkart case, it's not a vertically integrated entity that is resolving the case. The consumer app online dispute will flow through the ODR system to the correspondent other participant who is a seller platform and maybe a delivery platform, depending on where the issue is. Maybe it's a delivery issue or it's a product issue. And then it will be resolved, and ONDC will facilitate the SLAs around it and so on as part of the participatory governance model. So I think these are all very early, and UPI, we have seen this working, by the way. We have 330 banks and wallets, 90 odd apps, and that's only consumer and B2B. And then we have B2B, millions of merchants on UPI with 5.5 billion transactions being done every month, right? So we have seen this working. So we are positive that we will find our way through, and we have a mechanism to deal with the decentralized dispute resolution, decentralized reputation, and so on. But hey, this is a time for all of you, not only ask questions, also jump in the pool and actually help the network answer the question. But because India will make this happen, that's my belief, because our penetration is so low that digitization is inevitability. Open demand for artisans, like Anjali was talking about, brilliant examples of thousands of artisans having an ability to participate and see the demand. So we will go through this, but I think we'll have a heartburn, a lot of heartburn. So please step up and try to help us answer this as well. So I think I would have covered more, and I love Sujith for all the Beckn specific. I didn't want to talk his stuff.
So, Pramod, just a couple of things I want to come in here. One is the point around sort of you address data. A lot of questions around how do we get ONDC ready. There's still questions around how do smaller sellers get discovered? What will be the search?
So let me answer that question so that I don't miss it. I think again, if the idea of ONDC is the O part of the ONDC, open network, and also the expanding the pie, really digitizing the edges and expanding to several hundred millions to participate, not the top 50, 60 million top of the pyramid people to participate. We must have platforms, seller-side platform, new age platforms who are purpose-driven platform, who are going after restaurants, a Shopify for restaurants, a Shopify for artisans, I'm just using Shopify because some of you are familiar with it. Maybe Shopify has grown too big, but don't think original Shopify. Let me put it that way, okay? But nevertheless, it's the idea of digitization of those edges are all new platforms. That actually means ONDC, if ONDC eventually only onboards 3 big platforms, as we have 3 big platforms, we failed our attempt in creating ONDC. So I think you failed our attempt to make this happen in India. Okay, and VCs have failed attempt to invest in new entrepreneurial digitization opportunity. So Khata books of the world, I think all of these guys who are trying with kirana shops and artisans and different gets an opportunity. The fundamental difference though is this: even if it is a social entrepreneur who is going after tribal artisans, not a commercial opportunity. Today, they cannot make a market out of it, because unless you get $1 billion capital investment and throw Shah Rukh Khan on ads, you're not getting consumers. Even then, you can't get consumer apps. All of you know, I mean, you can't get consumers. ONDC is offering a mechanism. This unbundling allows ONDC to say all these new age entrepreneurs don't have to look at the full stack. They can only look at the digitization of the edge, connect to the grid. Then the demand comes from apps who are already having hundreds of millions of customers on the other side. So the app guys have consumers, producer, seller side can automate without each of them having a full vertical integration. Think of that way. I think that means ability to digitize and ability to bring people to an open marketplace, open market network becomes faster and cheaper for entrepreneurs. Of course, you have to create your own moat. Of course, you have to create your own value adds. Of course, because it's like somebody asked me this question. If you commoditize at the bottom, then what's left for entrepreneurs? But my answer has been then, whether we commoditize, your friends are going to commoditize. I think it's very, very clear. Who has not commoditized your own friends, before? I mean, every 10 years, we are going to commoditize like Tetris game. At the bottom of the layer is going to be commoditized, whether it's cloud, computing, anything that you look at it. So I think it is important that entrepreneurs look for value creation on a simple interoperability rail. I think ONDC is offering that interoperability rail, nothing more, nothing less. We prefer, hopefully, with a reasonable, open, participatory governance, shared systems in play, so that all of you can now create your own innovation and modes and eventually digitize 1 billion people. So I'll leave it at that.
That is so inspiring, Pramod. So inspiring. What a vision, right? So it's a call to action really for all the investors
Absolutely.
and the founders and the technologists.
Stop asking questions. Solve them.
No, absolutely solve them. And Koshy and team are running hackathons constantly. Yeah. They're looking for seller apps and buyer apps and all kinds of other utility apps that will ride on ONDC. I'm just going to now spotlight a couple of people who had specific questions. First is Rochelle D'Souza. Rochelle, please, quick introduction and then your question and brief question, please.
Yeah, thanks, Anjali, and thanks, Dr. and team, for being on the call. We're still trying to wrap our heads around the whole ONDC thing. So pardon the rudimentary question. I head investments for a private equity fund called Lighthouse. So my question is basically, I'm trying to understand. So as a consumer today, when I log on to the Amazon app and say I'm buying a sari, right? I know the sellers that will be on the platform, Amazon will be selling. So it will show me a list of options as a consumer. Now, assume in the world of ONDC, how does the interface for the consumer appear? And with respect to the search algorithm, how does that make it equitable? And, how does the interface look for this consumer? Does the consumer know that there's a separate interface called ONDC? Does it reside as a backbone? I'm just trying to visualize how life will be post ONDC.
Yeah, it's a good way.
Pramod, hold on. I'm going to ask a couple more questions to come and then maybe we address them all together.
Yeah.
Next
I think that's also related to that ordering and experience and
Yeah.
ranking and all.
There are a couple more coming in, so we can address them all together. Puru, you are up next. Puru, your question.
Hi, thanks,
comment.
Anjali.
And Puru, I had to spotlight Puru because he actually got the ball rolling on this session. He messaged me saying, we need to learn more. So here you are.
Thanks, Anjali, for putting it all together. And thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. And congratulations on building such a scaled platform. I had a very rudimentary question again, just like the previous person, which is, while I understand the value of infrastructure, underlying infrastructure, and what it could actually bring to the table, how do we create a grammar around pricing, and how do we ensure that the large players are not able to kind of take the demand away from the smaller sellers, through predatory pricing and and discounts. So that was my main question.
Should I take that one, Pramod, or do you? Oh, there are more questions. Okay.
Okay. We had a question from Parabal. Parabal, you're up next. Here you go. Puru is the founder and runs Vishwin. So you didn't introduce himself. Parabal, you're up next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question was, it seems different layers of participants will benefit from the platform. But who is the first customer? Who is the primary beneficiary? And what's the specific value add when we compare ourselves to the current platform model? Is it the startup ecosystem? Is it the seller or is it the buyer? Who do you anticipate as the primary beneficiary when we get started with ONDC?
Okay, let's take these three and then we'll move on to the rest.
I can give a quick answer for it, but I'll let Sujith and Koshy come in as well, because both have both policy implications and protocol implications. First one, consumer experience. Frankly, it doesn't change much. Consumers, of course, they will be aware, like UPI being there, but pre-UPI, we were scanning Paytm's QR code and paying roughly the same way, right? But except that it was a closed-loop payment within Paytm. So I'm not sure experience is going to change much, frankly. Maybe we don't have to change much. It's a question of searching for a product or a service, and I'm seeing the listing, and I'm seeing some of them with, oh, by the way, protocol allows the badging and credentials to carry through. So you can say Amazon verified or platform verified, FSCI, what FSCI certified, or any other certifications, anything that matter. Protocol allows you to carry all this through. So the listing of the consumer will see pretty much same as what you would see in a platform-centric world, except that the listing will come from different providers. So you will also see this is coming from this platform and this is coming from this platforms and so on. So you will see an integrated view of more products. So today, for example, if you search for a sari, you may not find that sari in Amazon today. Let's say a hand-printed in artisan sari or something, you won't find it. You may not find it unless they have listed it. But in the ONDC, you will start finding products that otherwise the platforms may not have onboarded. Okay, so you will see, I think the catalog would be a lot more universal catalog. Think of that way. So that's what it looked like. But otherwise, pretty much similar experience. So add to cart, explore, view details, buy, payment. So it sort of look like similar experience, I think, from the consumer side. And the second one, predatory pricing. I'll do all three and go to the let Koshy answer that. And predatory pricing, excellent question. I don't think we have a full answer. Network policies have to come in the middle. Again, anti-competitive thinking has to come in the middle. But at least as from an entrepreneur, from a lot of us personally, my personal take, this is ideally better that the government and the regulators don't have to step in. Okay, if we are forcing them to step in to solve it, it doesn't typically come around to a good decision because it gets tricky. So I think it is better that, and that's where I'm hoping. Personally, I hope as a network facilitator, ONDC with a participatory governance from all of you who are participating on the network can come up with some sort of a rule to allow balancing that act. But again, it has to be market pricing. It can't pricing, in the product pricing can't be government driven. So it has to be left to some predatory pricing and things will happen. But it'll be interesting to watch out. I think facilitatory conversations will have to happen to solve that matter. Specific beneficiary. Actually, again, personally, I see platforms pamper consumers quite well, and so I'm not sure whether consumers are the primary beneficiary. Primary beneficiary from our side would be millions of micro entrepreneurs. India is by design a micro entrepreneurship culture, service industry culture, gig economy, kicking in culture. So I think it is about digitization of that. So I would think they are the primary beneficiary, but that opens up secondary beneficiaries for both government to achieve inclusion and digitization and economic opportunities, open up the economic opportunities, but also eventually consumers having, seeing the choice in play. And we see this in Twitter. Like 2 days back, there was someone saying, can we reinvent mobility? Can we create alternate platform? I'm done with this taxi guys calling. I'm booking through the app. Obviously, you know the names. I'm booking through the apps and they're just canceling it because they just don't want that kind of, they're saying 16 hours I'm running and the margins are horrendous and I'm going to shut off the AC. I don't want to go wherever you want to go. So I think there is some societal angst being generated. So I think there is even consumer, eventually you will see consumers benefiting through an open grid. That's what my gut feel. But primary probably is provider side. But Koshy and then Sujith.
Yeah, Koshy, there's lots of questions around big platforms, small platforms. Is ONDC supportive of this or that? I think it's useful to just clarify. ONDC is just supportive of everybody.
Let me just add. I'll add this, and just to want to add some more dimension to what the three questions, because these are very broad-based questions. I wanted to give an ONDC perspective to add some dimension, and also the thing. One is the experience. Okay, I want to just add. So today, if you look at, there are only 2 or 3 platforms or applications which are allowing me to buy. Okay, and they decide how to show it to me. They do it a nice job. Like I said earlier, we are going to see innovation coming from diverse set of people who want to make buying experience better for me. For example, I'm talking to some of the bankers. They said that we would like to offer commerce on our platform, which was normally used for only banking facility. Somebody like a telecom company is saying, that's not a big guy. Somebody like a small person who's like, I'm just giving an example, somebody like a MyGate who's only providing condominium entry facilities. What I'm saying is you're going to see different kinds of people coming together and innovating completely different buyer experience to meet the choice of the kind of people. Today, I'm so used to, I agree with Amazon and Flipkart, they are good ones. But are they the only options? I am absolutely confident that with about 100, 150 different kind of specialized people coming, they will help me with better option. He'll help me to, please remember, their job is only to make my buying experience better. They're not getting commission from anywhere. So they need to give maybe even AI, ML, anything that is possible under the sun to make my experience better. So I am very, very confident that this buying experience, at the end of it, there is a buyer platform. So we are used to seeing 1 or 2 buyer platforms, think that's the only way. That's not the only way. I think it's going to be humongously innovative options coming up. That's on the one point. Second thing, on the predatory pricing again, like, I want to just give you one example. See, one of the challenges that we were facing in some of the, big platforms, if I take the example of the mobile phones, okay. So one of the biggest complaint of the industry was, the mobile phone is priced as much, much lesser than what is there in the market. But the thing that was there, that industry was very strong. So they had the wherewithal to come and put up a very strong case. And today, these prices are not different because the industry is too strong. But that's not the case for every product. Now, tomorrow, when you have ONDC available, let's say I am selling my bread. I'm just giving a stupid example. And if I feel that it is being sold at underpriced at the other platform, and at the same time, the ONDC is giving me such a large network of buyers, I'll say, I don't want to deal with that platform. Just like the other industry put their foot down. So ONDC provides the opportunity for everybody to put their foot down a little better than earlier. Okay, so that is the, and the third thing, who is the primary beneficiary? Pramod asked it very well, but I have one more point. If you look at today, you heard Anil saying, there are only few products that is being sold, to be very honest. There are only few enterprises who are actually selling, and big part of the market is by few items, which is called high profit margin or whatever that is there. What we are going to see is, as this encourages a lot more sellers to come in with a lot more products. Okay, that is of course helping the sellers in the first instance, but immediately is going to help on the buyers also. And now the last, Anjali was saying, are we only trying to work out the biggies? No. Our focus, as I said, the biggies can handle by themselves. In fact, Sujith and Pramod and gang has put together such fantastic documentation that I have to just send a link and they will be able to figure out with 1 or 2 answers. Whereas the whole army of us who are working in ONDC, is to make the life, we are just continuously thinking, how do I make the people who are not so savvy to equally benefit and take the benefit and take the advantage of coming onto the network as fast as possible. So we are trying to get them training material, interactive sessions, and so on and so forth. Because we believe our success is not going to be measured, because we are not in valuation game. I don't have to give a dividend to anybody. I don't have to say that, my share price went up by 100 times. My job is to say that how many buyer applications have come, how many seller applications have come, how many sellers have come in, how many new products have come in. What is, I think I will be measured by the democratization index if I create one, and not by the, the number of transactions few people did. And I believe that I have to be open myself to that, quote unquote, Pramod, you should develop that democratization index of ONDC.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Sujith have the,
Sujith,
I love the idea. Sujith is going
to
to have the last word. We have 5 more minutes.
No.
Last word goes to Sujith. And
no, I think fascinating. I think for every responses, I think there have been some counter questions that are coming. I think it's very difficult to answer, as you can see, and I have to just open another laptop to start typing. But a few things, I think, as a fundamental principle, I know we have very little time as a takeaway. I think ONDC is enabling, the protocol, underlying protocol is enabling interoperability. So when you talk about big and large platforms, today the platforms are big because they are not selling anything by themselves. They have sellers coming onto those platforms because sellers come over to that platform because they think that there is copious demand available on the same platform. First fundamental thing that's happening with ONDC is that demand can come from anywhere on open network. You have several platforms giving you almost same or if a bigger number of supply. So the questions that sellers will start asking is, do I have a choice? More than just staying on one big platform, or can I start looking at smaller and platforms of my own? So I think somewhere the seller autonomy is going up on ONDC network. I can be on ONDC with my own platform or a smaller platform who's willing to configure my rules of business onto the platform and be present on ONDC. That's one. And that kind of addresses multiple scenarios. For example, can I set my own price for what I'm selling? I don't have to be defined by the rule of a big aggregator that I was relying on so far. I, as a seller, can define my own rules and publish my prices and at my own command, and allow for the buyer apps to present my price the way I want to. I mean, it's a little bit of a policy and other interventions, but that transparency of price will increasingly start showing up. Right. And in terms of discounts, I'm sure some of the things that the protocol naturally enables is that ultimately price is not the only thing customers see. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate that we only have given price as an element of value to the customer. But in case of searches, what will happen is, especially in grocery and other segments, you're also giving a lot of other what we call as metadata to help customer make the right selection. It's not just about price. If I want a packet of bread, can a local kirana store deliver it faster to me than relying on any of the online stores, dark stores, or the quote-unquote quick commerce stores if I have a neighborhood guide discovering that I'm looking for a bread and able to service? So a lot of other parameters come into play for the first time, and it's not just a very price-sensitive purchase behavior that you will start seeing as opening up. And I think there was also a question on dispute resolution, and I thought, Anjali, that would be important to address. I think if you look at the protocol itself, the ability for seller to define their own terms through a platform that they trust, to define their own terms and actually commit to serving those terms. So if I commit to a term saying that I will accept returns or I will probably do a refund, and that's just my terms I have committed, I will honor that, and that honoring and commitment is actually overlaid through the protocol itself. So every transaction is like a digital micro contract which establishes trust between the buyer and seller, irrespective of which platform they're coming from, and they're expected to honor that. To a large extent, I mean, there's this experience that, if I'm only managing the customer and seller is coming from somewhere else, how do I manage if the seller is evading from the commitments that he's doing? So some of these are built in to give that trust to buyer and the seller to know that, yeah, if I am agreeing to do this business on these terms, the other counterparty will honor that. I think that, and if you build on top of that on ability to have autonomy on price, ability to offer my own offers. And we are seeing that in another network in mobility where the driver unions for the first time without an aggregator are trying to give their own pricing and discounts. So I think that behavior will evolve. These are early days, but over a period of time, that seller autonomy will start playing up. And the question about should I be part of a big platform or small platform is is an opportunity for the entrepreneurs, the young neo entrepreneurs, to jump in and say, I can give you a platform that is, that is friendlier to you. So those are the opportunities that I think ONDC will throw up. Anjali, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Couple of quick questions. There is on logistics. Will it integrate with other platforms or can integrate directly with buyers and sellers? This is from Agarwal. Dhaval, sorry, we're running out of time, so I'm not going to spotlight you, but it's from Dhaval. And then there is a question around someone who has actually built, Sridhar Dhiripala has built a business and wants to know what is the size of catalog, what will be Google search like mechanism. And then there is another one on platform they have built and they want to understand how to onboard it onto ONDC. So Sujith, I'm going to leave you with all of these questions at the end. And after that, friends, we will sign off. Thank you for a really engaged session.
Right. So I think logistics, if any logistic provider wants to offer logistics as a services to both consumers and businesses who want to engage, whether it's a hyperlocal or an intercity long-haul logistics, ONDC does offer that facility. If I were to break the entire shopping experience online, from buyer finding something of item of interest on the catalog and placing an order, and then the seller himself locating and identifying a logistic player who can actually fulfill that order in terms of picking up the item from the store or the warehouse and having it delivered. Those three, both the legs of the transactions are possible on ONDC. We have actually demonstrated that, and it's already working with some of the beta transactions that we are doing. We call them cascaded transactions. Now here, there are multiple choices again available. Consumer can directly say that I will get the logistics done. I'll just place the order on the seller and I will manage the logistics by finding a logistic player on ONDC. Or the seller themselves can get a logistic agency on the network and have them fulfill it. So the choices are multiple, and it doesn't stop them from using their own exclusive delivery players if they have to. But the choices is available. And I think that fulfillment side of it, and the supply liquidity on the fulfillment side with more logistics players will coming up, kind of fuel the whole transactions on ONDC. So logistic players out there must come with their numbers onto ONDC and with all the pin code coverages that they have to actually make the fulfillment a much bigger thing on ONDC, and it's completely frictionless in terms of finding business on ONDC for those players. Yeah. I think the other questions about onboarding, I think there is a team. If I can just quote the email IDs here, team@ondc.org, Koshy, with your permission. I think please do write to them. And we don't have I don't think ONDC yet has a sophisticated online registration, state your interest kind of a website yet. I think it's still a startup, but do write to team@ondc.org, and there is a very, very elaborate onboarding process. We have divided participations, as I can see from my what I see on the ground, into different cohorts, and some of the cohorts who came in early just went live, and there's a future cohorts coming in. So please, whoever is going live, the friction to go live is limited. It's about getting your platform ready and add these minimal protocol specifications implemented and get connected. And with a few test transactions, you can be pretty much ready to go online. So we should, request all of you to do write to the ONDC team at team@ondc.org and line yourself up for onboarding as quickly as possible.
And some great suggestions, follow-on sessions on this one. Can we start a blog community where ideas can be shared, updates can be shared, and so on? And Koshy, my personal favorite coming out of this session, I'm sorry, one more to do on your list is the democratization index. But you asked for it, you said it first. So here we go. We will have to close the session. It was terrific. Thank you for a very, very engaged participation. And we'll try and do more of these if this is helpful. And as somebody said, in Dr. Pramod Varma, we trust, indeed we do. All right, Sujith, Pramod, Koshy, Riddhi, thank you. And thanks to everyone who came in. And I have to call out the Stanford community that got the ball rolling on this, and everyone else who participated. Thank you.
Fantastic set of questions, Anjali. I must give credit to the audience. Thank you so much for participating and listening. Thank you.
Okay, bye.